bring the hand down and step back on the right.
I'm missing it again. Somewhere I'm getting the footwork wrong.
I don't know that I'm really good at picking things up quickly.
I'm debating if I should go for a walk.
Whatever you need to do, and I'll go pick up the kids.
And I'll tell you, I think Maddie's just feeling tortured. Every minute she's like, oh, was that a contraction?
Polygamy didn't fail here. It performed exactly as designed, manufacturing jealousy, then calling it devotion. Meri's bed and breakfast has become the Rorschach test of this saga. Some see self-reliance, others see selective memory, and everyone sees a photo op for people who didn't lift a finger. The foundational facts are less cinematic than the legend. The property purchase rested not solely on pluck, but on family capital, an advance inheritance from her mother and a partnership with her brother, followed by the mother taking up residence and management. So yes, perseverance was on display. So were a silent partner and intergenerational funds. The bootstrap story plays well on camera. The balance sheet tells a more complicated tale. The subsequent pivot from overnight hospitality to event space was not merely a creative rebrand, it was a concession to reality, renovations, safety concerns, and the unwanted tourism of parasocial fandom. Running a small inn is not quaint. It's crisis management with laundry. Closing the rooms and opening the doors to curated gatherings looks less like retreat and more like clear-eyed triage. It turns a 24/7 service job into a controllable calendar, and crucially, makes the property a home first and a business second. That choice is not failure, it's sanity. The family's response to Meri's acquisition was textbook collective hypocrisy. First, a firm refusal of funding. Later, sudden curiosity about whether the B&B profits should enrich the communal pot. When money is theoretical, everyone is principled. When it materializes, everyone is a partner. The ribbon-cutting cameo by the family's most performative patriarch, smiles as bright as the flashbulbs, was the perfect cameo for a man who prizes optics over obligation. He arrived for the applause, not the invoices. As for the side hustle optics, the carriage house morphed into a retail broadcast studio for clothing sales, with live product claims and a neatly systematized operation. The objections to MALMs are numerous and, in many cases, warranted. Still, the reality here is transactional and tangible. Inventory moves, bills get paid, and the enterprise remains arguably more honest than the perennial family narrative of unity. When the family fund sounds like a scholarship for favorites, diversification is a virtue. Meri's housing choice quickly acquired layers of social speculation. Why is Jen in Parowan? Why the staffing shuffle? Why not convert the whole thing to private use? Because building an income-adjacent life is not a crime. The house isn't palatial by reality TV standards. It's simply big enough to host and mercifully quiet enough to heal. Converting the carriage house into a content and commerce space, closing public rooms, managing stalker behavior, and insisting on privacy. These are the moves of someone electing to live, not just to film. The episode of The Unpacked Wedding Dress, staged or sincere, invited one obvious inference: permanence. Whether the official address changed is less relevant than the unmistakable subtext that the B&B is not a revolving door, it's a refuge. Any family that once demanded a cut now demands distance. The irony writes itself. Beneath the decor and the live streams sits the more uncomfortable ledger entry. Had family money been used at purchase, certain names would have migrated quietly onto the title, perhaps even with controlling interest. The house would have become a hostage. The only thing worse than a hostile board is a spouse who acts like one. The distance between personal home and communal asset is the distance between autonomy and arbitration. Meri chose accordingly. Meanwhile, the show's preferred protagonist arrived with his favored narrative. He is aggrieved, misunderstood, and just a press conference away from redemption. The B&B storyline punctures that mythology because it features results without him. When the cameras capture him front and center at other people's triumphs, the effect is less benevolent patriarch and more brand squatter. The applause he collects is as borrowed as the equity he never invested. Then there is the question nobody on screen wants to calculate: who actually benefited from the family when push came to property? The house symbolizes what no one wants to confess, that collective decisions routinely served a couple in a cul-de-sac and a camera facing their foyer. The B&B's survival, reimagined as an event space, is not nostalgia. It's a boundary. It's the opposite of a ribbon cutting. A lock. Of course, in the minor key of gossip, fertility jokes and menopausal memes circulated, proof that, when arguments run out, biology becomes a blunt instrument. The editorial verdict is simple. When your defensive character relies on taunting a uterus, the argument has already lost. The more interesting and damning line is the one that lingers. Any young woman would see a married man as marriageable material. It is, at best, a theology of scarcity masquerading as romance. At worst, a blueprint for competitive cruelty. Either way, it explains why the guest list is short at Girls' Night. Enter the spin-off audition masquerading as penance, a stint on a quasi-military reality show where contestants sweat out their reputations. The self-portrait was carefully composed. Stoic regret, manly resolve, a funerary letter addressed predictably to the designated muse rather than the children, who learned to stop expecting calls back. If the exercise was meant to be a moral stress test, he opted to game the rubric instead, asking after angles rather than answers. Even his contrition came hedged. Willing to say I've been wrong is not accountability, it's pre-litigation. The show's staff, apparently immune to his charisma, supplied the most succinct diagnosis. Love exists only where agreement does. Translation: loyalty is demanded, not earned, and dissent is excommunicated. His swift return to the barracks, puzzled by the point of the questioning, revealed the deeper problem. A redemption narrative requires a protagonist who learns. He remains a negotiator looking for an audience. The episode could have been a bridge to his children. It became a broadcast to his reflection. This has always been the hidden economy of the series. The women supply the narrative arc. Survival, career pivots, co-parenting triage, while the patriarch supplies the set pieces, rants, vows, and tactical interviews that confuse interrogation with improv. When he announced that he had to emotionally support Meri too much, the confession was not vulnerability. It was a pink slip disguised as self-care. The subtext was not, I am failing. It was, you are heavy. The exit door appeared soon after. The familial fallout has been audited repeatedly by the audience. Truly's health emergency narrated in Christine's memoir remains the most damning footnote. The absence at Isabel's surgery remains the most public one. The apologists insist that everyone failed at times. A fair point. Yet the pattern is not symmetrical. The system rewarded those who worshipped proximity to him, then punished the rest for noticing. Where a father could have been, a brand inserted itself. The children learned to read the call sheet. As for the wives, post-exit reinventions have been graded on a curve. Janelle is crowned for stoicism, Christine for romantic reboot, Meri for stubborn endurance. The tidy moral, women blooming once the ringmaster stops spinning the tent, comforts the viewers who prefer transformation to complication. Less soothing is the allegation, repeated like a drumbeat, that the entire family are performers at best and grifters at worst. The word is harsh. The footage is harsher. The show fed them, then it fed on them, and still they film. The financial narrative is the least flattering angle, which is why it's always photographed from a distance. Once upon a time, the grocery budget for a household of 2 matched the allocation for households of 7, a policy as indefensible as it is revealing. Later, as income stabilized, finances allegedly separated by spouse, only to merge again when television made everyone solvent enough to pretend equality. It is no surprise that resentment hardened along lines not of marriage but of math. Children notice when dinner is decorative. Adults notice when equity means escrow for someone else's dream home. Polygamy, we are told, failed here because the man failed the model. The rebuttal writes itself. A system that commodifies fertility, sanctifies jealousy as devotion, and requires women to accept rotating scarcity is not a model at all. It is a competition with sacraments. Janelle's continued affinity for the theology, edited to include better terms for women, earns measured side-eye. Converts, after all, are often the last to concede the altar is on fire. Her identity as the logical one becomes a velvet trap. Admitting the structure is broken would require admitting decades of rationalization.
The counter-argument, equally persistent, is that no one is blameless. True. Neglect wears many costumes: avoidance, favoritism, martyrdom, discipline masquerading as control. Meri's critics recount meanness and volatility. Her defenders remind everyone of the context: infertility deployed against her, paper-thin walls, and the unending grind of childcare for children who were not hers in a system that measured worth by birth. Both accounts can be accurate. The question is not whether she was difficult, it is whether the entire arrangement was designed to make her so. The most clarifying exchange arrives not in a confessional, but in a throwaway line. If you have problems with the first wives, add another. This is not family, it's spin. A husband who solves conflict by importing a competitor does not deserve a household. He deserves a focus group. Then cameras arrived, and with them, cash. The move to Las Vegas exposed the children to neighborhoods where dads came home nightly and marriages did not require a sign-up sheet. Once the curtain was yanked, the Oz effect kicked in. What remained was a useful villain and a ratings bump. On the subject of that useful villain, Robin's public brand is equal parts doe-eyed devoutness and ironclad grievance. When her now infamous musing suggested that a married man advertises reliability, the message to other women was received and underlined in red. Friends, unsurprisingly, are scarce. Enemies need not apply. The role is already filled by anyone who questions her ascendancy. The copy-and-paste rumor mill, family photos recreated with new faces, old letters overwritten with new names, speaks to the broader anxiety. History is malleable when authored by the favored. Remove the show's lighting, and what remains is a sociology experiment with real people as variables. The through line is simple. Children prosper in predictability, and this franchise offered anything but. The adults insist the kids were equally loved. The kids remember who had health care, who had bread and butter dinners, and who had a parent available on surgery day. Family first became the motto. Household first was the practice. The catfishing era is treated as both humiliation and hinge. The easy take paints Meri as faithless. The honest one recognizes desperation in a woman exiled in place. She tried to build a life away from the center of gravity that had already ejected her. When the attempt imploded, the punishment was permanent. Even her child's relationship with the patriarch seemed to depend on maternal proximity. When that proximity evaporated, so did the contact. In this system,
A father does not have children, he has franchises. Access runs through the mother on duty. On the perennial debate, would Meri and the patriarch have lasted as monogamists? The available evidence suggests not. One party required attention that only a harem could plausibly generate. The other offered devotion that a single spouse could have honored. The math never added up. At some point, the man who needs to be adored by a room will resent the woman who insists on occupying a seat at the table rather than kneeling beside it. Failure was not a matter of if, but of saturated demand. Those looking for heroes in this ensemble will remain disappointed. Christine's late-breaking claim that he is a good man reads like diplomacy written on embossed stationery, useful for public peace, irrelevant to private history. Her earlier acquiescence to dubious medical exercises for a child who needed surgery is not erased by later advocacy. Janelle's admirable independence coexists with years of financial entanglements that advantaged others. Even the audience's favorite indictment, that they're all grifters, oversimplifies a more troubling truth. Once your mortgage depends on confessionals, sincerity becomes a line item.
Meri's personality, dissected ad nauseum, deserves one final, unglamorous point. Being difficult is not the same as being monstrous, and being wounded is not the same as being harmless. She has been controlling, sharp, sometimes cruel. She has also been cornered by a doctrine that prized obedience and fecundity, offering her neither refuge. The head wife pose was an identity salvaged from a cupboard left mostly bare. If that posture calcified into rigidity, it did so under conditions designed to pit women against one another and then chastise them for competing. The system needed a villain. She was conveniently available. The adult children's positioning in recent years, public support for some elders, conspicuous distance from others, tracks perfectly with who showed up, who paid attention, and who spent holidays requiring ritualized apology to the household favorite. Reconciliation would be easy if the patriarch could accept basic terms. A coffee with a son does not require prior worship of the reigning queen, and contrition does not come with conditions. He prefers a stage-managed absolution ceremony. The children prefer a parent. Guess who keeps waiting? Financially, the fairest arrangement would have acknowledged that a household of 7 needs more than a household of 2. Pretending otherwise is moral theater. Early parody by wife orphaned a dozen children at the dinner table. Later, parody by television paid everyone enough to forget. The resentment that lingers isn't petty, it's arithmetic. When an even split buys private school tuition for one and budget bread for others, unity is a slogan stamped on an overdue bill. If there is a moral, it's this. Polygamy in this configuration was not a faith practice. It was a scarcity engine. It created the very rivalries it then condemned, installed a favorite as minister of fairness, and deputized the cameras to call it love. The viewers kept watching not because the story was romantic, but because it was recognizably human in its worst ways. Status hoarding, grievance nursing, and allergic to accountability. The only plot twist worth believing is the one where the women stop auditioning for a man who never learned the script. Back at the B&B, the dress is out of the box and the doors are selectively open. The home is now a stage on which only invited guests perform. That is, progress dressed as decor. There will be more live streams, more events, more careful curating of who gets in and who stays out. There will be fewer ribbon cuttings for those who contributed opinions instead of payments. If the family story began with "keep sweet," the sequel is simpler. Keep receipts. They built a legacy on illusion. We're just here to write the footnotes. Subscribe for the postscript.